welcome to a video pro jam. This is the podcast where two sisters and an occasional guest have 1 hour to develop and pitch a board game. I am Miriam. I am joined by my extremely artistic and talented sister. She loves, is it G-Plan furniture?
I do love G-Plan furniture, it's true.
Ironically, the G-Plan is just to fill G's house with G-Plan furniture.
The G-Plan is indeed to disregard bitches and acquire furniture.
And we are joined by my very good friend, Leo.
Hello, I'm Leo.
Former guest from the Past the Growbox episode, I believe. Leo, would you mind just for any new listeners telling them a little bit about yourself and like what kind of games and things you enjoy?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I really I tend to play like a lot of like kind of like I like games that do interesting things with their narrative, that have cool like storytelling potential, so like RPGs and the like. And I'm also into like games that have you doing a lot of like analysis and planning. And I think the third type is like games that are like just kind of like short and fun, Those are like my three kind of homes, especially in the board game space. Yeah, I don't have anything else for you. I'm sorry.
Leo is very creative, big writing type, enjoys various types of RPGs. Basically, I feel like we live in some of the same spaces in the games world.
Leo is a friend of the show in every regard.
As is traditional, as the guest, you have brought us our one-word prompt for this video episode. What is the prompt that you've brought us?
Yeah, the prompt is projection.
Which is a very interesting word in terms of like the various kind of associations and maybe different definitions that it has. Is there one that was at the forefront of your mind when you thought to suggest this prompt?
I mean, in a sense, yes. So I thought of this prompt like 2 weeks after I was on the show last time, when I was visiting you, Miriam.
Oh yeah.
And there was like a projection set up in the museum we went to. And I thought of that, and that was cool. And then I thought about the word projection and how it has like 10 different meanings, all revolving around, having something and then sending it away to somewhere, which is quite an interesting thing to just do. Yeah.
Nice. I've given a little bit of thought to this prompt. I feel like because of being so open-ended, it's one of the ones that has less clear like connotations in terms of a game for me. I think the thing that I have landed on as potentially quite interesting is like a game which is about projecting the future, like maybe either in kind of like a bookkeeping way, like there are games like Camel Up or Long Shot, which are like racing games where you're dealing with odds, or perhaps a game where you would sort of at the beginning like set out your kind of like predictive path of where you think the game's going to go, and then as the game goes on, like you would be trying to attack towards that or else trying to adjust your projection. Sort of like predictive games is kind of what I've landed on thinking about. Georgia, did you have any like particular ideas?
I thought about, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was a game that we made on a video crow jam, I think with Kieran, where it had like a ghost lamp. Do you remember this?
Yes,
so we did make a game
Unfinished
with
Business.
Unfinished
It was
Business.
Like shadow puppet game.
This was a game with a literal projector. Can I just say, Miriam, that I am picking up noise on your microphone? It is crinkling. I hear crinkling.
Oh, that's probably my laptop. There's not much I can do about
You should
having
not have made your laptop out of crisps.
It was a rookie mistake. next time I build myself a PC, I'll choose a more durable and applicable material.
A quieter one is all I'm asking for. Anyway, it only really comes through when you're also like talking. So maybe just
might improve if I switch off the power because my laptop kind of calms down when it's on battery saver.
interesting. That does actually immediately seem to sound better.
Cool.
Leo, what did you have any particular game ideas when you thought about projection?
I didn't have a game idea in mind, because I didn't. But yeah, I just thought projection, there's a lot of things you can project, right? Like you can throw things, you can put your thoughts in someone else's head, not actually, but you can assume it is projecting. And you can kind of you can project with light, and you can also project influence or force across a map with some of the ones that come to me. Just getting things to other places, which that was kind of the thing that I was thinking of, right? Like the process of taking something from here and sending it to there.
So to talk about a slightly insane thought that I had.
Oh, good.
Tell me more.
I mean, this feels like it's an idea that would normally come from a Georgia, but on this occasion, I've decided to pop out with it. I was thinking about, I guess, sort of inspired by the idea of an astral projection, or kind of a telepathy type situation. Okay, imagine that there's a large 3D model of a mansion, kind of like a doll's house situation, and you can send a little guy inside it, and I suppose they would be robotically controlled or maybe on a track or something, and there's a little camera in there. I was imagining some kind of game attached to the model themselves. I was imagining some sort of, I guess, bizarre game show task where it's you have access to the camera feed of this little figure that's climbing around in this big house, but you can only see it for 4 seconds at a time, and you have to try and deduce things about the environment and figure out where you're going and stuff. This is so stupid.
It's not stupid, but it is pushing the definition of a board game.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was where my head went.
I do like the idea of a haunted house type idea. So things that I was thinking about included psychological projection. So oh, you're really cranky today or whatever, and it's actually them that's really cranky.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was projecting with light. I imagined a game that used a projector in some way, maybe to change the board or something like that, maybe that played with shadows. I know we have made a game that played with shadows before, or played with transparency. And I think you could probably use some of these ideas, even if we're not talking about a game with remote control robots and a phone app and stuff. Something with a haunted house seems pretty achievable with this idea. You could have sort of a 3D model of a house, and maybe you set up a little projector that comes with it, and it projects ghosts into rooms of the house or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the things that I was thinking was just the idea of taking basically a game about having a shipment, basically, running a trade caravan or something.
Okay.
Which, it's a bit stretching the definition of projection, but taking things to places and making sure they go to the right one, I think.
Like a what are they called? A pick up and deliver game.
Like a logistics type game.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, not necessarily logistics. I think like
like moving
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, maybe logistics, but maybe also a bit like, because like because there's logistics, but it's also like, you do actually have to like travel, right? Like if you want to get something to another place, someone has to actually go there and talk to humans. Um, and I think that's an interesting place to be.
The double meaning of projection, as in, like, as you said, sort of throwing or moving something, and then also predicting future income, does kind of lend itself quite well to a game with a businessy feel to it.
Yeah, and you could also, if you really wanted, you could do some like intrigue / industrial espionage type stuff, and you could have like the projection of like emotions and psychological stuff as well.
I'm going to start the timer.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we have to do that at some point, and I've decided that now is the time. So we have 1 hour starting now. So I've definitely seen games where like moving things about. Sometimes it's literal, like there's a cooperative game called Track and Signal, I think it is, where it's like a train game and you need to work together to like change the signals on the track or like move the the changes, whatever they're called, so the track lines up the right way and you're moving things about and trying to deliver things to and from in a certain period of time. Or sometimes a logistics game can be about like trying to like create routes, so you don't necessarily need to do the moving, but you just need to create the paths. There's a game called Curious Cargo, which I think deals with that.
Or Ticket to Ride.
Yes.
Can I put a hard veto on trains? Can I say our game doesn't have trains? There's enough games with trains.
Yeah, hard agree. I guess that's the question I'm trying to get to, is like, I'm cool with making a game that involves moving stuff around, but like, how does it be interesting?
So I feel like you and I, Miriam, were definitely quite taken with the idea of it being in some way supernatural. So can we sort of combine like Leo's desire to move stuff from place to place with our desire for it to be spooky in some way? Like, is there some
vetoed train for you talking about a ghost train?
No. I will accept a ghost boat.
I would say moving things around a haunted house. That's
sort of poltergeist style.
Yeah, either you're a poltergeist or we are trying to move things in a house where there's a poltergeist constantly trying to screw us.
Yeah. Or like an asymmetrical game where one player is a poltergeist and the others are just trying to live in the house.
Yeah. You know what poltergeists love doing? They love throwing things.
Yes, so true. Could this have some kind of like throw burrito sort of dexterity game aspect to it? Maybe.
It's like most of the time we're just playing this like asymmetrical 1v many game with a poltergeist, but then once around the poltergeist gets to just fully just throw something out.
Throw a beanbag at the board.
Yeah. I know you vetoed trains, but like imagine if there was some kind of like a shooting gallery and one team, like one side had to like set up like a carriage with things on and the poltergeist just got to throw.
Damn it, you're making trains sound cool.
I mean, it doesn't need to be a train.
It's true, it could be a not train.
It could be like a donkey.
Or it could be like a haunted fun fair. Like a shooting gallery is something you'd get at a fun fair, right?
Yeah.
Although I think I there is something that I like here. So like an asymmetrical 1v many, and it's moving things around. Maybe the sort of inhabitants of the house are trying to make things be in their correct rooms. And then the poltergeist has some other agenda. And if the poltergeist got to throw a beanbag, I wouldn't be upset about it, but I'm also fine to admit that that's a silly idea.
Let's put a pin in it, but I'm
I-
happy to look back at it.
I feel like you could do an interesting thing actually with like maybe like a 3-player game in a haunted house, and you have the poltergeist who's looking to throw everything everywhere, a ghost who just wants to like live. They want things to be as they start, and then like a person who is trying to like cleanse the house or loot it or something.
Okay.
So it's like the person is almost in the middle, like the ghost wants things to stay as like as similar to the original like state of the house as possible, and the poltergeist just is kind of like an agent of chaos, wants to sometimes throw things, and then there's a person who like maybe wants to move an armchair in.
Yeah, so like maybe like the ghost and the poltergeist are like mostly opposed, but they like the person wants to get rid of both of them, and if the person is too successful they might want to gang up on them, because that's what I do if I was a ghost.
Yeah, we've got to put our differences aside. And the main thing that needs to happen is get this MF human out of here. Okay, I think this is kind of an awesome idea.
I think you might be right.
It's like a 3-way, I guess, competitive. And I suppose there has to be kind of like a level of balance where like each 2 players could potentially have a united front against the other player. So the the human inhabitant and the ghost could be aligned along the level that like they want slightly less chaos and things being thrown around. The ghosts could be aligned because basically they want to be able to haunt and not get constantly exercised. And then the human could be aligned with the poltergeist in the sense that like, yeah, I do want to like have some art, and maybe I didn't like those chairs.
Yeah, or like maybe I want to get into that locked room or something.
Your door illustrations have accidentally made a tiny shark.
It's true. So yeah, I've sort of sketched out like it's all, I guess, sort of somewhat like the Cluedo board or something, like a board with rooms. So we've moved, I think, into 2-dimensional space, possibly, although I'm certainly open to a 3-dimensional interpretation. So what do we see this like? I'm totally on board with the theme and I really like it. I want to know sort of what does the play look like? Like, could we have, little actual objects, like little pieces of furniture and stuff, or is it more abstract than that? Is it cards or tokens?
I think it could be cute to have little bits of furniture and stuff.
I think if you're playing a game where there's a poltergeist, you want to be able to throw a thing.
Yeah, I think I agree. So just little, card chairs and bookcases and yeah, like I don't know, probably neither of you ever did play Hero Quest, but like the Hero Quest furniture.
I suppose that in terms of like gameplay, the like way that your imagination goes when you're trying to imagine it is like basically on your turn you get to do a thing. I suppose that the like human player maybe has, say, a projection of like how they want a certain room to look, and so the things they're doing might be trying to achieve that goal. And perhaps the poltergeist player, maybe even what they do is almost like randomly determined, like they just roll some dice and something happens.
Okay, I have a possible suggestion.
Okay.
but this might be stupid. I'm very, very open to just being shut down on this. What if this game is played where the game is in the room and the players go in one by one while the other two sit outside?
Okay.
So you don't know who is the human, the ghost, or the poltergeist.
Okay.
Wait. To be clear, when you say it's in a room, not there's not a board. The board is wherever you are.
No, okay. I was thinking that you would just set up the board in a room. I wasn't thinking that one of you would go. That is amazing, Leo. But I think it does. We've made some things that definitely aren't board games, but that might be.
Yeah, that's not a board game.
That's not a board game. That's just being weird in your house.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not illegal to be weird in your house. No, I was imagining more like it's a game that's played not asynchronously, like you're all playing at the same time, but it's played like maybe you all go in one at a time in the early rounds and then you go in two at a time so that you can like observe each other or something.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where I'm going with it, but I thought that might mean that like the decisions you make, you could try and do something, like to put suspicion on someone else and avoid getting exercised or something.
I don't know how that would work, and I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I'm not. It seems like it would make it a lot more complicated.
Yes, this is true.
To do.
But I suppose what we need to figure out is like,
what's everyone's objective? Like,
and how does it? If everyone just gets like move one thing a turn, then like, where's it?
What's happening? Like,
yeah,
because like it's one thing to kind of say like, oh well, one player wants chaos, one player wants order, and one player wants sort of something in the middle. But in practice, how does that play out in turns? And so could it be a game that's sort of about negotiating, like trying to find some kind of acceptable, I don't know, that feels overly cooperative for a game where it feels like the characters are sort of fairly opposed in what they
also feels like it's just spooky decorum.
Yeah, okay, I don't want spooky decorum.
I think it's so perhaps I guess I was kind of imagining like we've got this kind of asymmetry going on. It's hard to figure out like how you could adjust it so that like different people's turns could be meaningful different amounts and they can make meaningful decisions.
I feel like this problem could be coming from the fact that we've kind of made the asymmetry a bit too symmetrical, like by making it so that it's 1v1v1 instead of 2v1, it's no longer asymmetrical. It's just like everyone's got a different objective.
Yeah.
And I think it could be the case that it might work better to have it possible. So two players are trying to achieve the same thing, but then the other player just has like a completely different set of abilities to those players. Like this could be a dexterity game where the players are trying to set up the furniture in a way that's logical or matches a pattern, but the poltergeist has like a little catapult and they are trying to knock it over, but it's difficult for them. Like they can cause a lot of destruction, but it's tricky.
Okay. I like because
and that's projecting as well. Like if you're shooting pellets or something.
I can imagine a scenario where like every turn the poltergeist is only able to affect like a certain area of the map. So like they're limited in like where they can reach. And also thematically, I can imagine that like the poltergeist could like care about certain objects more than other objects because like in life they were a florist or I don't know, like or the stuff that belonged to their late husband they are more bothered about, and so there could be like as the like team, you could be working around like the patterns that you observe in the
Yes.
poltergeist behavior. So there could be like patterns, things that are determined by like strict rules, and then there could be things that are determined by randomness, like the poltergeist rolls a die and they can only work in a certain room that turn or something.
Yes, this is sparking something for me. So I think what this is saying to me is that you would have lots and lots of different pieces of furniture, like little doll's house style furniture, which would be, fun to pop out and put together in the way that that card based stuff is.
Mm.
And then each piece of furniture also has a little corresponding card in like a deck of cards. So the poltergeist would have like a private hand of items that they are bound to in some way, so they can move from item to item, and but say if none of the items they were bound to were in a room, they just couldn't go to that room. They can only be in particular rooms that's limited by a set of items that only they know. And then also like a series of items that they hate, and that they're trying to like knock down.
Okay.
And so I think the players would be trying to like by moving things following a set of rules, they're trying to set up rooms. Like each room has to have a certain number of pieces of furniture or something. But the poltergeist will always try and like destroy things.
Oh, could it be? Sorry, I feel like I should
No,
let
no,
Leo
I
speak
don't.
at a certain point,
Yeah.
but could it be something where like there aren't like predetermined rooms in the house? It might be that like one room starts out as being the bathroom, but like you realize during the course of play that like, okay, the poltergeist just isn't going to let this be a bathroom because whenever we're in here, they're like smashing the porcelain and turning the taps on. But if we move the bathroom to the other room, maybe that will be okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like the game element of it needs to come out a bit more, but I feel like something is taking shape. But I want to hear from Leo.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about your thing with like the objects and so on. And it sounds a bit kind of like a hidden roles game in that sense, where like yeah, at the start everything would be in chaos, and as presumably it's not a game where people start dying left and right, but like as you get to grips with what the poltergeist cares about and can do, you start to get order. And I don't know, maybe confine the poltergeist to like one room of the house or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, okay. I feel like that is I think that might have been the puzzle piece that was slightly missing for me. So there would be a set number of objects that are associated with the poltergeist.
Oh, and if you can
And
move them all to one room.
yeah, then you can so the poltergeist would win by knocking over every single one of those objects, or the players would win. Oh no, it's that's not exactly it, because you would learn which objects were associated with the poltergeist by them knocking them over, I think.
And the
Okay.
poltergeist could be working against you moving everything to one room because they would have the ability to move things.
Okay, so I think I have it, possibly, but I want to hear from you. So I feel like the poltergeist has some kind of, they can't just like, it's not a person reaching over and like knocking something over with their hand. I think they have to use some kind of tool to do it. So I think it would be like a little catapult or something, just to make this a bit more challenging.
Okay.
So how I think it would work is that players can either set a piece of furniture back upright or move it to another room. Like on their turn, the human players can do one of those two things to a piece of furniture, but they can move it more than one piece of furniture on a turn. So I think it would be limited, but not overly limited.
Mhm.
So if the poltergeist knocks over the bookshelf, the players can pick that bookshelf up that turn, but they can't then move it to another room. But they
What
have
would
the
be
clue.
the benefit of picking it back up?
Well, because then they would be able to move it next turn.
Yeah,
Okay.
or like, the poltergeist wants all the pieces to be down, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the furniture in place would be kind of like a life system, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I think what I'm thinking is that the poltergeist would be trying to wreak havoc. If they can, they'd like to knock over more than one thing in a turn, which
Mhm.
would mean like setting up a trick shot or something like that.
Mhm.
The poltergeist would win if all 5 of the pieces of furniture that they have in their private hand are knocked over, and the
Mhm.
players win if all 5 pieces are confined to a single room. So the players do a certain amount of movement turns on each of their turns, and then they have to close their eyes while the poltergeist makes an attack in one room, a limited room.
Yes.
Mhm.
Now the poltergeist can either just like try and sort of snipe all 5 things, but obviously, like if they
Mhm.
do that, then the players will know exactly what their targets are.
Mm.
But I think the poltergeist would have to do misdirection and also really try and knock over multiple
Yeah.
things.
I've seen a game which has maybe what we're talking about. Like it involves a certain kind of construction. I think it's called like Villa das Vampire or something. It's a German game and it's like you use almost like a little hockey stick and it's a kid's game and you're meant to like whack these little like garlic bulbs into the coffins of the vampires so you can wake them up for the big vampire party. Which might be easier to implement than a little catapult in the sense that like you presumably aren't allowed to pick the thing up in order to. Oh, I see, you're thinking you could like catapult a thing at an object. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's exactly that. Like it might be more like whiffing a small beanbag at it or something that would have the potential to knock over 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, have to be like limited in how you got to do it.
Yeah, or like a little bouncy ball, I think would be
awesome.
Would fit the theme of it, right? Because then it's all about trick shots, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I think I agree that a little bouncy ball might be the way to go. And it could have like a little ghostly face on it.
This is such a fun game idea. It's like one person's job is just to like wreck shit and the other players are trying to work against them.
So I think the board then would be a little bit more 3-dimensional than I was thinking of, because I think it would have interior walls.
Yeah, I think you'd need those.
So you wouldn't, but
yes.
It wouldn't have exterior walls. So it'd kind of be like a floor plan with walls, but you can access it from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Or like the exterior walls were very low, maybe?
Yeah. But it would be like. And I mean, you could have doors because then there is the potential for like incredible trick shots.
Another game which features something a bit like this is a penguin game called Ice Cool, and in that you've got like little penguins and they are like little weebles that you flick through the doors, basically in a map just like what you're drawing, but the like floor is like slightly shiny and you're trying to like run around catching each other, but you flick the little penguins and you just get one flick per turn kind of thing.
Okay.
I was thinking about flicking games like Flying Goblins and stuff like that.
Yes.
So then, yeah, the room would have like, it's got a little cardboard dining table. And you can like, pelt a little bouncy ball at it and try and knock over that and the bookcase to maximize damage in this room, but they don't know that your main target was the dining table. They'll just open their eyes from their turn and be like, oh, the dining table and the bookcase. Well, we can pick both of them up, but
yeah.
So another thing, like, are we still thinking a 3-player game? Because I think there's something I really like about that. Like, it's a couple moving into a haunted house kind of thing.
Mm.
In which case, you could have like a kind of action, a cooperative action economy thing where, you know how I said you could pick something up or move it, but maybe picking something up is something one person could do, but moving something to another room needs
Both of you?
both.
Mm.
So you'd each have like a number of kind of action points on your turn, and you'd have to do a bit of like action economy thinking to make that work.
I would say, I think 2 people being needed to move something to another room, like, while realistic, does sound like a nightmare in terms of like actually playing it. Because what if you have like 3 objects you need to move? You then need to like, both of you need to move and then back and then move again and then back, and like you'd have to make it like a really important thing. Like, it would become like the thing that you play around.
I don't think I was imagining that like you have individual player pieces that you have to move about.
I suppose.
I was imagining it would be like moving a thing is just an action that you just both have to spend.
Maybe
an action point to do, I guess.
That was also what I was thinking, but I also take Leo's point that it kind of really, it makes moving something into a bigger decision, and we don't want to shift the balance too much in favor of the poltergeist player, I think.
Yeah.
Like, this is something where the balance would be obviously really tricky to figure out, but
I mean,
maybe it's more like one person can move something by themselves, but they can only move it one room, and if you team up, then you can move it 3 rooms or something, like where there's kind of a
sliding scale.
Yeah.
I think it depends on because we know what we want like the poltergeist to be doing, but what do we want the human players to be doing? Do we want them to be like spending their time trying to move stuff around and like trap the poltergeist, or do they want to be like, putting things back as they are, or do they want to be like fortifying stuff to be harder to knock down?
I
think all of those actions would be something I would want the human players to get to do. But I think their objective is always to work out what the poltergeist's targets are and move those objects to one room.
I also think it would be nice if they cared about like where things are in the house outside of that. Like, thematically, it would be nice if they like cared about having a functioning living room. But
yeah,
I don't know if maybe that's necessary like to the game.
Set bonuses or score at the end for achieving something like that. Like,
you could even have it be like, you have like a gameplay bonus, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you have a functioning kitchen, because you can cook, you have more energy.
That would be,
and then because then that makes the throwing at knocking stuff over more interesting, because it's like, did they knock over the fridge because it's one of their objects, or did they knock it over because they don't want us to have a nice dinner?
Okay. So this would be really tricky to implement, but could be really cool. Like, basically what you've described there, Leo, but kind of like achievement cards. So the card would say, if your fridge and cooker are both upright and in the same room, then you have an additional 2 action points per turn. Or
and would the poltergeist be able to see that?
Yeah, that would all be like known information.
And then there would be like a good night's sleep, or like invited guests, or it would be like you would care about different objects for each thing.
Yeah. So I think at the start you would populate the house with things, but it would be fairly random. Like how it could go is that each player, one at a time, just gets to put a bit of furniture in a room. So the human players still get to like they would be able to look at the achievements and be like, well, great, we can put the fridge and the cooker in the same room as long as the poltergeist doesn't get to the fridge first. Well, get to the cooker first, I guess, like whichever, like but so yeah, you could start with some of those achievements already active and the poltergeist could be trying to take them out, or you could not prioritize those but hopefully set them up in play. And then at the end you could maybe have like whether the humans win or lose, maybe they score a little bit of like bonus if they have achievements active. Just like for fun.
Or you could even make it like a progressive difficulty thing, I guess, because like not everyone's going to be the same amount of good at throwing a bouncy ball at stuff. So like if you're it might be hard to guess like the first time, but if you're playing against like a sports person, like a professional handball player, I assume would be good at throwing things. Then like like your job is obviously easier. But if you're playing against, I don't know, like I have friends with dyspraxia, presumably they have a harder time at throwing things.
But yes, they might be a more unpredictable opponent to play against. Yeah, I think all of this makes sense, and I think you could like, I don't think we have to hash it out right now, but I think you could like use the cards to give different types of bonuses, like to do with moving furniture or setting it right, or like the ability to swap two things around or something, like maybe little boosted power up moves. So something I've been thinking is that while I think it will be fun to be the poltergeist kind of only gets to do one thing. Like they get to try and wreak havoc with their bouncy ball. So I think that these achievements kind of help add an element of strategy to what they want to do as well.
Yeah.
It lets them choose to do something beyond just like, well, I've got 5 things to knock over and I'm going to try and knock all 5 of them over.
Yeah. I definitely imagine that this would want to be a relatively short game.
Yes.
In any case. Because like somebody else might want a turn at being the poltergeist. You don't want it to go on a long time.
Something that, yeah. So just thinking about the setup phase that I was talking about, where I think each player would get to like place a piece of furniture one at a time. It would be possible for most of the target pieces to be in the same room at the start anyway, but only the poltergeist would know that because their information is private. I wonder if there's something we could do where like the poltergeist has to reveal 2 of their, like maybe if you have one of the difficult achievements set up, then you get to look at a random 2 of the poltergeist items or something.
But if you maps it out right, unless the people who aren't the poltergeist are putting everything in the same room, like even if the people who aren't the poltergeist are putting everything in the same room, you're guaranteed like at least a 4-1 split if the poltergeist doesn't do something dumb. And to get like that 4-1 thing without the poltergeist like skipping their own items, like again they would have to get all 4 out of the 5 things without missing and put them all in the same room like consecutively. It just seems like if you're going to put everything in the same room and you do like it's I played a game called War of Whispers where like you have like random teams, and like it was very unlikely, but you can have exactly the same lineups. And I think you just got to kind of live with that.
Also there could be just the limitation, like the living room can only have 4 objects in and the kitchen can only have 3 objects in, like you could just put a limit on where things are placed.
That's exactly what I was actually thinking that a little bit earlier in the recording for the exact thing that Leo just said, which is that like it would technically be strategic for the human players to like cram as much into one room as they could. So yeah.
I mean, not necessarily though, because if everything's in one room, then like it's a lot easier to knock a lot of them down. Assuming you haven't got them jammed in there.
That's true.
But yeah.
Now one question I wanted to ask is, and I think I know the answer to this, at least in my head, but I'd like to know what you think. Do we think there's a set room that you're trying to get all the poltergeist stuff into? Like you're trying to get it into a small room so you're not losing access to the best room in your house, or is it just a random room? So in my head, it's just if everything is in the same room, then the human players win.
That's what I've been imagining too, although that admittedly could end up with like an easy difficulty just by accident. Like, there just happened to be like 2 of the 5 things already in one room and other ones adjacent or whatever.
Yeah.
How big are we expecting this house model to be though? Because there can't be like if there's 5 objects, you can't, like there's a limit on the number of rooms you can fit into a house and still be able to throw things at them.
Yeah, I think it might be best if it was...
contraire. You've been to my house?
I think 4 rooms might, like maybe even 4 evenly sized rooms, so even simpler than what I've drawn here, might be the way to go. Like a just a 2x2
I don't know, does that make it a little bit simple? Unless we're severely limiting the number of action points that the humans get. Like, moving something would only ever be 1.
Yeah, but you don't... It could, like... Because, it's the kind of game... if you're doing a hidden information game, if the team that doesn't have the secret information has the secret information, it should be really easy for them to win, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, otherwise it doesn't work, right? Because otherwise you have to figure it out, and then it's still hard to win.
Yeah, this is I agree with this. I actually think that it being easy for the humans to move things around, like I think there should be a limit on the number of things they can move in a turn, but I don't think they should be able to like pick up and move 5 things in one turn. But I do think that it should be fairly easy for them to get things from one room to another, for the reason that, yeah, like you said, they also have to figure out like what is being targeted, and they also have to like try and get some of their achievements set up so that they have more options and so on.
Yeah.
So can I sort of quickly recap what I think we have? So what I think we have is like a sort of pop-up board, or a board that you build that has 4 room spaces in them, and those rooms have a reasonable limit on the number of items that can be in there. It would have to be higher than 5 for obvious reasons. Then we have tons of little pieces of furniture. I'm thinking like a really pretty good amount. And the first phase of the game is that, taking it in turns, players put furniture into rooms. The humans might be trying to do it in a logical way to achieve some of their achievements and start off with a bonus. The poltergeist is trying to do basically the exact opposite. It's trying to disrupt set bonuses, and it's trying to probably spread out items that are of interest to it across the house. Then on each... there's 2 types of turn, I guess. Like the human players take their turn together. They don't take their turn separately. Is that right? They take like a joint turn where they can interact with the furniture, moving it from room to room, setting it right if it's in the wrong place. And then after their turn, which has a set number of actions associated with it, that's determined by like a baseline number of action points plus any achievements they have active. Then the poltergeist, limited to 1 room somehow, maybe by a four-sided die, gets to wreck house with a bouncy ball.
Mhm.
Then the turn switches over. The human players get to go again. It costs action points to set things right, and it costs action points to move things. So they have to sort of think about their action economy. And the poltergeist is trying to have all of their pieces of furniture knocked over before the players have all of their pieces of furniture into the same room. As I say this out loud, this creates a situation where it is the poltergeist's responsibility to tell the human players when they've won.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which isn't necessarily bad, but obviously, like, a jerk player could choose not to do that, or a forgetful player could forget to do that.
Okay.
I like to not design around jerk players.
Yeah. I have two small proposals based on this. So one is I think there should be 4 objects so that you can have, because for 4 rooms, 4 objects, it's neater. Yep. But then you can also have a 4-sided die, and the die selects one of the objects at random.
Okay.
For what purpose?
To be the
target.
The poltergeist can operate in the room that their selected object is in.
Okay,
basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I think maybe if the object is knocked down, they can choose any room, probably.
Okay.
Okay.
Because otherwise, because if you keep rolling ones, it would just suck.
And that also creates like additional information for the players, like the other players. It's not perfect information for the reason that you just gave, but they would in theory be able to say like, oh well, last time they rolled a 1, they were in this room, but this time they were in this room, and we moved the sofa from that room to that room, so we think the sofa's one of the objects.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And I think the other thing is like no, I mean, just like select the objects with like randomly with cards or something. But that I think that was already implied. I think I just got carried away with my 4s and 4s.
I think that is really neat, Leo. I think that kind of solves it. So does play continue until someone wins?
Presumably, yes.
Yeah, right. How does the poltergeist win? Oh, knocking all their things over.
Knocking all 4 of their things are knocked over.
Oh, yeah, no, I had another point. The humans might as well just be one player, right? That is there like, are they ever acting separately?
That's a really good question. So I think the humans could be one player, or could be more than one player, but it's a bit arbitrary, isn't it? Like, if I'm thinking in terms of action points, then the human players is an arbitrarily sized store of action points spread over an arbitrary number of people.
It does just feel more fun if it's 2v1 rather than 1v1. I don't know that I would choose to play this game 1v1. But
unless you got to swap. So I think, what do I think? One of the things that is good about the human players being more than one person is the initial distribution of furniture task.
Yeah, that's true.
But I wonder if we could do some kind of like balance. So maybe they do have separate turns, but they also have the option to trade. No, I think. I actually think it is absolutely fine for them to have their own store of action points and their own turns, and just to like communicate about what they're doing. But like you would be free to take your own action as a human and do something that's just of interest to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just saying, like, like if I'm playing this, like if you think of like Pandemic or the Caves game or whatever, like most games where you have cooperative people, there's like they'll have like a unique thing that they can do, right? They won't just be like the same. I feel like you
That's
might
a good
need like
addition.
human counters or like special abilities. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessary in this game per se. Like I certainly know similar games that don't have the like unique player abilities going on. I I see this as a more simple game, like a short
yeah,
playing game.
that's
I
true. Yeah.
it kind of depends, I suppose, but like it's not the kind of game like Forbidden Island or something like that where you need like unique player ability to sort of like add some crunch to the strategy. It's not exactly a strategy game. It is more of like a deduction and kind of like a little bit of strategy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because like the human player's job is less fun, right?
It
Yes.
kind of depends. I feel it depends what kind of thing you consider fun. um, like
The
I think it's
deduction element of it is fun.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's nice to like cooperate in that way. Like when you're working against a player, when you're multiple people working against one player, I think that's sort of enjoyable in its own right. I'm just flagging up that we've got 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for us to maybe move on to thinking about what this game looks like and is called.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Um,
does anyone have any immediate thoughts? I mean, on the look, I fairly recently got the Dimensions Haunted House escape room in a box, and that's got the kind of look that I was imagining. It's very purple and green and blue, and it's a slightly cartoony haunted house.
so you were imagining a spooky aesthetic as opposed to just a normal house aesthetic where you're throwing things around.
It's it's gotta be like it's gotta be a slightly spooky house, right?
Slightly spooky, I
Like
think.
you are it yeah, because the house is haunted, right? Like you don't get how like ghosts haunting like new builds. Do you really? Um,
I
Can't
think the
say.
fact that it's like a newly moved into house could have some effect on how it looks. You could have like packing boxes and stuff like that.
mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so it's got like haunted uh aesthetic with like so I was thinking that the board itself and potentially the furniture might need to be really quite sturdy if we're throwing around
Yes.
a bouncy ball
Yes.
because I can imagine if somebody could just drop a bouncy ball on the board from a height and like if everything's just made of paperboard like they could just like wreck everything.
Yeah.
So this is when I mentioned before the furniture from Hero Quest, and that's made of like thick pasteboard, thicker than you would make a board game box out of.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I like token thickness, I guess. But then each of them has like a little molded plastic base that the pieces slot into, or like molded plastic corners. So
Okay.
that like creates the solidity through these little like molded pieces that you slot the board slices into. And
When have you
that's
been playing Hero Quest?
Andy, we borrowed a copy off a friend. Andy has big nostalgia for it because it is from his childhood.
Mm.
So we played it with Andy. It's like an interesting game. It's
Okay.
very ambitious. So
All
it's
right.
kind of like this. So that's how I think I would do it, so that the
Mm.
little bits of furniture were like pretty firm.
Mm.
And then yeah, the walls I think you'd have to clip them on quite well as well. Like I think you'd do that kind of like slot intersection and
Mm-hmm.
then have slidey pieces that wedge it onto the board.
Okay. So what about the name of the game?
Name that game.
Um,
So fun words that we've been saying. Poltergeist.
Mhm.
Something about the bouncy ball. Like Polter chaos.
Bounce the house.
Bounce the house.
Something about flipping things. The raise the roof.
Is there like a? I feel like there's a pun that you could do with like Geist, right? Just like
Geist heist.
Geist heist. There we go.
I don't mind Geist heist.
Yeah.
Or the bad Geist.
Both good.
Wow.
Geist heist is, I guess, quite nice because there is sort of like a planning and execution element to it. I quite like Geist heist.
Yeah.
You got it. We're calling it Geist heist.
All right.
Okay, so the game is called Geist Heist. It's an asymmetrical poltergeist moving in game where you try to trap a poltergeist in one room in your house while the poltergeist tries to knock over everything in your house that it doesn't like.
Yeah. I think that's pretty great.
It's definitely not what I thought we were going to make.
No, but I don't know what I thought we were going to make. So, I mean, that's pretty great. One in a long and storied history of rad spooky games made by us.
We love to make a game that's a bit spooky.
As you can see, George is a big fan of these ghosts.
Look, if they're very compelling ghosts. They look really cute.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to make a little suggestion, which might be one that gets shot down.
We're not in the business of shooting down.
Okay.
I'm locking and loading, ready to shoot this down.
So imagine for the human players, imagine you make like the walls in your thing really quite high, so you could sit at it and not see over them. And the human players, when they're moving things, they have to like sit on opposite sides of the table, and they're only allowed to touch pieces that they can't initially see, and the other one has to like guide them. To do it.
Okay.
I like that as an addition. I don't know, it just makes it a little bit weirder.
Yeah. And it also makes it like, I don't know, like it's really funny trying to guide someone to touch something they can't see, right? Or to do something that they
makes it a bit more interactive in the same kind of like slightly more like tactile and like practical way that the Geist's job is.
Also, if you let your walls be gigantic, it lets you have bigger pieces. And if you're having these pieces anyway, you should be like, we've got nice pieces to make this work. Don't just have them sit there.
Okay, that's enough ghosts now, I think, probably. There's probably an elegant sufficiency of ghosts.
I don't know. I mean, it's the Simpsons thing, right? It's a plane made of guns that shoot guns that shoot guns.
It's a ghost made of ghosts.
but have ghosts.
All right. Well, that is Geist Heist. Another great guest episode. Another banger from Leo and the team. Thank you, Leo, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Georgia, for all your artwork. And
I didn't do enough artwork. This is going to be such a boring video. I kept getting caught up in the description and being like, oh no, I haven't drawn anything for 10 minutes.
That's all good. I mean, you usually just, you usually smash it. And I think that you've drawn enough ghosts to really make up for the lack of practical illustration. Thank you, listener. We love you, listener.
We love you, listener.
We love you, listener.
Come back another time for more program.
Caw.